I wanted to talk about global debt. Maddie, you put this into the chat here. Looks like the world of debt, $97 trillion of global debt at the end of 2023. The United States has about 34.2% of that global debt, about $33 trillion. Just such a big part of this graph. Pretty amazing. And I think some of the things that are causing, some of the things that may be happening in the world that we don't really understand is like who's really owning this debt, right? Because we owe somebody something. So do we behave in a certain way based on who we owe money to? But either way, just super fascinating with how much debt we are consuming. You can see here, I'll blow this up a little bit. We have 34.2% of the global trade, and we're over 123% over the GDP in terms of debt. Mike, why does this matter? Does it matter? Are we still in modern monetary theory? Just doesn't matter. Keep printing money. Again, some of this debt is ours. Some of this debt we borrow from other governments. And is this a bad sign or not? That the whole world has this much debt?
Here's the first thing that I want to say. I don't know if this is a topic we should tackle today, because I brought this up and I think there's a lot to unpack here. But the one thing that I will say, I don't know how much time we have left, but the one thing that I will say, Kiyosaki always talks about the rules of money. And the one thing that I think that I've been, thinking about in my thinking time is how the rules of money have changed. And that's why I'm saying I don't know how far we want to go into this right now, but the rules of money have completely changed. In fact, the one thing that I'll position and toss it back, and maybe we do a deeper dive later, even inflation. 10 years ago, we would have said that inflation bad because of government debt. And we've even talked about this here. Because of government debt, on one hand, you want to control inflation because they have to pay that debt back with if their interest rates higher. And so governments want to control debt. But one of the things that I've been considering and thinking about is when we're in an environment like we are now, where the debt doesn't actually get paid off, it gets reissued. When was the last time that we actually paid off any government debt? It just got reissued. We just keep printing more money through, bonds, really, at the end of the day. And the one thing that I'll say about this is I actually think that we're living in a time where the government needs, and this can shift and pivot, but I think we're living in a time where the government actually wants, and we'll just talk specifically about the United States government, but the fact that we all have central banks and everything's kind of tied together, it's really everybody. But he who has the most debt today, I think, wins, which you saw by the top of that chart that I shared with Visual Capitalist. It's definitely the United States of America. We are the dominant power still, and we are the dominant dollar. So he who has more debt wins, because government, there's been a big conversation about the GDP, and we've even been wrestling with this. If things are so bad, why is GDP so high? Well, think about this. If inflation has gone up, I'm just going to say 8% per year in the last 4 years, an iPhone that was $1,000 in 2020 is now $1,080 in 21, and $1,200 in 22, and $1,300 in 23, and $1,400 in 2024. So if Apple sells 100 iPhones in 2020, then that's what, $100,000. If they sell 100 iPhones in 2024, then that's $140,000. Did they sell any more iPhones? No, but their gross margin or their gross sales went up. Therefore, GDP went up. And the things that we keep anchoring on is like, oh, GDP is increasing 2%, 3%, 4%. So all of these other indicators that the government's watching and we're all excited about, oh, GDP continues to increase. Well, of course it does. Inflation's up. So I think it's a big topic, but at the end of the day, like it does matter if we have to pay off our debt, like all of us have to do as individuals. We can't just keep racking it up. But when the government doesn't have to pay off their debt, the rules of money have changed. That was the point that I wanted to make.
When you are the world currency, the rules are a little bit different. And And I think we have strategically found a way to intertwine the global economy and get them drunk on dollars to where the unraveling of this would be so convoluted and really catastrophic to so many economies and countries around the world that we've kind of got people hooked on our drug in a capacity that we now feel like the scales and the weight of that dollar and the hold it has over the world gives us permission to be exactly what this graph shows, going, we don't really care if we have the most debt, and if we have to continue creating more debt, and if we have to continue printing more, because we're so far down this path now. Even when you look at BRICS and all of these countries that are trying to come together, majority of those countries are so intertwined with the US dollar that the unraveling of it would take. I was talking with a buddy of mine who his organization and their quants, and they've really dug into this BRICS threat. And every time I ask them about it, they're like, yeah, this is a big nothing burger. Like, see what these countries are able to do without the US dollar and how much it would actually require of their countries to unravel. It would take decades, if not centuries, or complete resets from happening. And so that's kind of the black swan type of argument, right? But I am very much of the camp of where Mike is at, and going,
That makes a lot of sense.
I just don't know if it matters right now. I think we could for sure find data and argument points to lean in on and say this is a threat and this matters and that matters. But in the grand scheme of things, for people like us, I don't think it matters.
Damn straight, Mooch.
Yeah, a year ago we were talking a lot about people coming off the dollar. There was a lot of news about China and Russia trying to talk to come off the dollar because the U.S. had weaponized the dollar over like Ukraine and Russia and being able to seize Russian assets and things like that. And they're like, why would we keep our money in dollars if the U.S. could actually seize our assets? And Sachs talked about it a lot on the All In podcast. But that has turned out to maybe not be the thing, right? Like we did think people were going to come off the dollar, and then even so, they didn't. What I loved about this chart and this article and the little stats right below is this made me a lot less worried about our debt situation. Now, I want to know what gazillionaire family actually owns every country deep down, because it's probably not a country. It's probably a family. Probably somebody that we could really get deep into the conspiracy theories. Because I thought we owed China all of our money, but China owes somebody else all their money. What made me feel better about this is that top quadrant is the United Kingdom and Germany and France and Italy and Spain, which really geographically all of Europe is like the United States. So it's going like, okay, we're no worse off than Europe when I thought we were. And then you look over at China and Japan, and it goes, all right, well, we're not. Yeah, China's a giant place population-wise, so maybe they're doing the best population-wise. But if you're ranking like population based on like happy people in the population or people thriving, go down to the chart though, which is probably the cool. Yeah, India made it, dude. I would never forget India, Ash. But this is the part that I thought was really interesting. So we're not as bad as Japan. So if you just circling on that a little bit, it talks about debt to GDP.
Way worse.
Right. So U.S. is 120% debt to GDP. So if you're over 100, in theory, you're bad, right? So the U.S. is 120. Well, Japan is 255. But look at that. The UK, France, Italy, like there's a whole bunch of major, Canada even, there's a whole bunch of major players in the world that are over the thing. So this whole article actually made me feel better about the U.S. instead of worse. I don't like that the U.S. is in so much debt and the overspending and all the things. But this makes it look like we're just normal compared to everybody else in the world. And if we're grading on a curve, then it gets a little bit better.
We're
so
still
I think
doing
that's
pretty okay.
Yeah, I think we're doing pretty okay.
We're still doing pretty okay. Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I mean, again, it doesn't, we talked about this on the previous episode too, just because Japan has these dynamics doesn't mean it's a bad country. So does it really matter when it comes down to everyday life, how we behave, right? I mean, Japan's such a beautiful country. People behave in such a lovely way. So it's not necessarily affecting the citizenry or in a way that we maybe understand. So just fascinating to watch what's going on. I mean, since 2019, global debt has increased 40%. So this is also a recent phenomenon. That's pretty big numbers. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this snippet and want to catch the full episode, head over to our YouTube channel, The King's Table Podcast. The link is right down in the description below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like, and ring that bell for notifications, and you are not going to want to miss this amazing content that we have for you every Friday. And remember, we love hearing from you, so drop your thoughts, questions, or feedback that you might have in the comments. We read everything, and we want you guys to respond so we can engage with you. It means the world to us. A big thank you for being part of the King's Table community, and if you found value in today's episode, remember that the cost of listening is that you must share it with somebody that may benefit, whether it's your friend, your family, your coworkers. So please keep sharing, keep engaging, and until next time, stay royal.